Prime Minister Narendra Modi has kick-started his three-day China tour with a visit to the famous terracota museum in Xi'an. The museum features 8,000 life-size clay warriors of the armies of the first emperor of China. The Prime Minister visited the archaeological excavation, which is sometimes referred to as the eighth wonder of the ancient world. Modi is currently in Xi'an, the hometown of, home district or home province rather, of the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Prime Minister Modi also signed the visitor book at the Terracotta Warriors Museum. All right, Mr. Joshi, you know, the question really here is that this is, of course, an amazing thing that he has done early in the morning. I mean, it's a World Heritage Site, UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's got a lot of relevance. It matters also a lot in terms of outreach, where Modi is trying to send out this message, which he does whenever he goes to any of the foreign land. But when he actually comes down to business, when actually he does things which in relative terms matter most, what really should one realistically expect from this particular trip? Let's start with today. Okay, well, number one, and I'm sticking my neck out here, I'll say that we will get a surprise on the border. Okay. There could be a movement, sharp movement on the border, and I'm saying it right now in the beginning, well before they actually have the sharp movement along the border.
Sharp movement, progress.
Okay.
Towards the settlement of the border issue.
Okay.
Secondly, when it comes to the economic side, see, the problem has been really in India, in the sense India is famous or infamous, I must say, for the difficulties of doing business here. Our ranking in ease of doing business is very, very low. I think 142nd or something like that. So he's going to take a package to the Chinese and say, well, you have been complaining about trying to set up stuff here. You see, because there's from our side, there has been a blockade from the security agencies. So there are certain businesses. So I think what he has got
I think you're referring to the telecom sector.
There are several sectors, you see. So what I think
the whole controversy, about Huawei and Xiaomi.
So, but Huawei is already here. It's one of the biggest companies in Bangalore.
Absolutely.
All I'm saying is, you see, today everything. I mean, this is made by the US, and now we know that, for
assembled
example,
in China.
You see, the chips. This recent Snowden revelation that these companies penetrated a company that makes SIM cards in Netherlands, meaning the Americans, and they planted something in each of the SIM cards. So who to trust? We can't trust the Americans, we can't trust the Chinese. So the point is that at some point we have to make a decision. Do we want to build fortresses all over and not allow anything in? Or do we take a calculated risk and isolate our really secure stuff, in the sense if we are talking of nuclear command, intelligence stuff, isolate that. Otherwise, you have to take your risks, because that the NSA is listening or the Chinese are listening. So what I'm trying to say is that you've got to go to the Chinese with a package of ease of doing business in India. How do you set up business quickly? So one is the idea, of course, the industrial parks, which came up when she was here.
Right.
Now, and park is convenient because in one place you can settle a whole lot of issues. The language barrier, ease of doing business barrier, diplomatic barrier can be settled there. So I definitely think that trying to make India more attractive to Chinese investment will be a very important, very high item in the Prime Minister's agenda. Okay,
let's quickly get in a word from Smita Sharma, who joins us from the next venue where Modi is expected to go, the Wild Goose Pagoda. Smita, if you can hear me, just tell us what really to expect from that particular venue, and also that crucial meeting, restricted talks. First of all, in diplomatic parlance, what does restricted talks mean, and what really to expect towards the end of the day?
Coming. Okay. Well, Sanket, let me just give all our viewers, in fact, a glimpse of China and Ni hao. Ni hao. I'm outside this Wild Goose Pagoda here, where I am having a mini Modi moment, because people clearly are too many curious onlookers. It's not a sight for them to see people come out here with cameras and shoot. That's a new thing for them. Even as I talk to you, a gentleman here, in fact, is trying to get a selfie clicked with me. But, you know, this Wild Goose Pagoda here, just a brief glimpse of history, Sanket, before we come into the serious part of the conversation. This was actually built by, you know, the 6th century scholar Huan Sang, or whom, in fact, the Chinese pronounce as Swan Tang. This place is always open, in fact, for tourists, because Huan Sang really came back from India with around 5,000 Sanskrit manuscripts in text, and this is the place where he sat for years, translated them into Chinese. Today, this pagoda, in fact, is closed. Unfortunately, because of technical considerations, I can't take you right now close to that point where security gate, in fact, manning has been set up with scanners, with X-ray machines, also Buddhist monks waiting inside. This is only afternoon, around 3:30 local time, which is 1 o'clock India time, when, in fact, Narendra Modi will come in here and Xi Jinping will be taking him around this place. You know, the Chinese president, really that departure from protocol. But before the two leaders come in here, they will enter into that restricted talks. Now, as far as that explanation of restricted is concerned, normally restricted means where it's not a structured dialogue, where it's not a delegation level talk. It's essentially the heads of states along with perhaps at best two people, maybe the NSA and the foreign secretary as well, and the translators who obviously would have to be there. You know, because the presidential system of government here in China, in India, you have, of course, a parliamentary democracy. So whenever you have an understanding, it's not really between the president and the prime minister. Those understandings come in after the prime minister to prime minister meetings that will be happening in Beijing. But this is the important, you know, the meeting, in fact, to watch out for, because at the end of the day, decisions that China takes, in fact, are driven by Xi Jinping, the man in power here, the powerful president. And your president is coming in here. People, in fact, anybody understands English? English? Xi Jinping is coming in here. Yeah, I can speak in English. You can speak in English. Very nice. We are just lucky, Sanket. I am just lucky to find
carry on. Let's have a town hall.
I'll come back to you.
Let's have a discussion there.
Is the place closed today for public?
Firstly, I want to say the welcome PM Modi come to China, and rather you know, the both of two countries have rich culture and a long history, and we hope to that our friendship can be increased by this time the PM Modi visited to China. Thank you.
So how did you learn about Mr. Modi? How did you get to know about Mr. Modi?
And he is, and I think he is a very good leader of India, the people, and the right, you know, the.
Have you seen photos of Mr. Modi? Do you know how Mr. Modi looks?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
He has the white mustache,
a beard,
and very handsome, and
nice.
very wisdom, and have the Eastern wisdom.
He's wearing a kurta, you know, which is the Indian dress.
Yeah.
Would you like to wear a kurta as well?
Yeah, he has the traditional Indian clothes.
Yes.
And very the handsome and wisdom.
So today, are you hoping that when Mr. Modi meets with Mr. Xi Jinping, relations between India and China will improve? Have you ever been to India?
No, I haven't, but I have interest in to be in India.
You want to?
Yes.
So are you hoping Mr. Modi will say, you know, visas should be allowed, Chinese should come in? What are you hoping from this?
I'm sorry, I feel a little
What do you want to tell the Indian Prime Minister? Do you want him to make visas easy so that more Chinese people like you can come to India?
Yes.
You would like to say that?
I'm sorry, I can't understand you very much.
You know, because a lot of time, of course, relationships in diplomacy, while there are those hard facts on the ground, there are those bitter contentious issues, Sanket, but there is also that people-to-people contact, which is of greatest essence. These are the people, you know, a lot of the younger generations today are the post-1962 generation. Just look at the kind of crowd. Ashok Bhanot is trying to, in fact, pan in the cameras, people standing up on the stairs as well, and a lot of people, as I said, in fact, not just waving out, but also trying to get their selfies with our camera crew here. Smita, there's a lot of interest. They don't understand our language, but we are still able to communicate.
Language is not the problem. Smita, that's exactly the point. Perhaps the people-to-people connect that you were talking about, language is not really particularly the problem there. What I find absolutely interesting is that you would not get so many cameras and selfies going if you were to, you know, set up your camera and shoot here in India. the amount of interest that, a broadcast of the kind that we are actually doing is generating in China is amazing. People are quite thrilled. So it's not just the language, but the whole, the whole way, the way the Indian media is carrying out this coverage. Just take us through, Smita. Perhaps if you can spot more people who are slightly familiar with the English language, who could perhaps express themselves. Okay, we seem to be having a bit of a problem connecting with Smita. We'll get that link up in just a short moment. But Nitin, you wanted to make certain observations.
I just wanted to tell you my experience of reporting from China over the last 7-8 years with a camera. Actually, for them, it's an unusual sight, except for some Western outfits, Western media outlets. Very few of their own camera teams are out there on the streets, because it's a very regulated kind of a approach that they have to media. Their own CCTV cameras are not out on the streets. They only do the official stuff and they do other reports. So therefore, and a foreigner doing this on the streets of any of the cities, be it Beijing, Shanghai.
So that's why you say that it's amusing for the people.
It's amusing for them, because in India, we are used to it, the people are used to it. In China, they're not so used to it. So therefore, they will crowd around you when you're doing a shoot on the streets, or you're interviewing
I remember
somebody.
this famous CNN or BBC broadcast where you had Chinese soldiers actually opening an umbrella not to allow you to shoot.
That's right.
Out in
At
the open.
Tiananmen Square, for instance, they would never allow you to shoot unless you have the permission. So once you got a permission and you started shooting or doing your piece to camera, they would start walking along with you if you're walking, doing the walking P2C.
You can't, it's a, they cannot allow unfiltered opinion to come on air. So everything is censored, meaning in the sense, in the internet, they've got guys watching everything on the Weibo that's going on. They've got guys with screens, they're watching anything you put up, let's say Dalai Lama, within 2 minutes, it'll vanish.
Okay.
Or first of all, it can't come up because there's the filter. Dalai Lama is
that point taken. It's like restricted access to whatever.
So
means
when you
of
do a piece to camera as a spontaneous thing, as a spontaneous thing, it's not allowable, because there's some guy out there can shout a slogan against the state. You know?
Okay.
In India, you do it, doesn't really matter.
But Mr. Joshi, the point that you were actually making is actually very interesting. Apart from what will come out in terms of business from this particular trip, just the way these archaeological sites are actually maintained in China. The terracota warriors
meaning you will be
museum.
surprised at the terracota warriors.
Look at the condition of our archaeological sites. You know, it's
no, you have up to this site, you have a super highway from Xi'an. You have an absolutely first-rate highway leading to this. You got to get off your bus or whatever it is, kind of almost a kilometer away. And even the Great Wild Goose Pagoda, you know, beautifully kept. In Beijing, going to Summer Palace, another World Heritage Site. Again, a super highway.
Okay, okay. Let's quickly go back to the Great Wild Goose Pagoda, where we have re-established our link with Smita. Smita, there's a bit of a town hall happening there. People are clicking selfies with you. You are already a star in China. Just take it away. Tell us what you see around you. And maybe could speak to a few people there.
Yes. Well, it's just it's very fascinating, Sanket, for me. You know, it's not really my first trip to. Just give me 2 minutes, so thank you. It's not really my first trip to China. This is the third time around that I'm coming in here. I've been to Kunming and, of course, that commercial capital of Shanghai as well. In Beijing, you know, but it's just interesting the amount of interest that is slowly generating amongst people out here when they listen to India, you know, which they relate to as Hindu. So that brings a sort of smile on their faces. They'll go like, oh, you're from Hindu and Niho and all of that. There are Chinese students who have, you know, taken up studies who are actually studying Rabindranath Tagore, his literature, his poems. In fact, incidentally today, there is also that movie which is being premiered in Beijing, which is a PK, Amir Khan's film. Amir Khan was also here. So, you know, on the cultural part, there is a lot to share, really. You know, this is that softer part of diplomacy. Perhaps one would think that needs to be harnessed much more. There are people, there are the younger generations, as I was mentioning earlier, who are, in fact, that post-1962 generation, and they somehow now do not want to carry that historical baggage of war, which a lot of people, of course, in the establishment, in the security experts, rightfully so, perhaps, obviously carry with them much more compared to the locals that we see on the streets. Now, clearly they don't understand the language. They think that I am possibly addressing them. So they continue to, of course, click these pictures. But, Sanket, Mr. Narendra Modi, we have seen him do this public outreach program. And you were talking about preservation of monuments. I was covering that Japan tour also of the Prime Minister last year. He went to that Toji temple. It's just so beautifully preserved. This Wild Goose Pagoda, to the terracota warriors that we went in yesterday. When you go to these places, you really think that India has just so much of history, and so much of it has just been destroyed or not been preserved. Our monuments are completely, they look shabby, they look dirty. The Indian society, the psyche is also, of course, to be blamed for that. Small little things that India can learn from countries like China. Xi'an, if you go to Xi Jinping's father's village, which is supposedly a village, Fuping, we brought in a special report from there yesterday, but Fuping can give, in fact, a run for its money to any of the urban cities or pockets in India. Look at the kind of roads that they've built. Look at the kind of cleanliness that they adhere to. The workers, in fact, who are responsible, the city, municipal, local officers, all those really thank you so much. Somebody from the crowd has passed me a bottle of water. Somebody, in fact, 2 minutes back just passed me some tissue papers to wipe off the sweat on my face because it's a warm and sunny day. But, if you were looking at those municipal workers also, the kind of facilities they are given, they have gloves, really, they have tongs, really. They're not looking at the dirty garbage work in the way manual scavenging is done in India. These are things. China also has a population of 1.3 billion to match up with India's. So every time we see that, if we are looking at these two Asian giants, economies, developing economies, but China definitely looks like it's just made it so much farther. It's not like it doesn't have problems. Yes, of course, there are those social media restrictions. Ever since I've landed in Beijing since Monday, because I do not have a VPN account, I've not been able to access Facebook, Twitter, any of the social media sites, or Google. I know that I'm constantly on surveillance. Intelligence agencies might just want to come and see my passports. But, despite those restrictions, there is an issue of corruption that the current government, in fact, is dealing with an iron hand. Corruption which is deep-rooted, which people here are very hushed about. If you were to ask even experts, they wouldn't be very forthright in talking about corruption or President Xi Jinping's dealing of it, starting, of course, with Beaujolais case that we saw, which was one of the most biggest corruption trials that happened in the recent histories in China. So these are issues China is dealing with. Its economic growth is now, of course, slowing down. It's come down to 7%. It's perhaps will, of course, go down much lower. There are sections here which also question Xi Jinping's, of course, with all these projects like the investment bank that China is promoting, or the other financial institutions that he's spending out of course, the forex, the country's reserves. That is being questioned, but obviously not publicly. There are those Sino-Weibo kind of social websites where all these criticisms happen in a much more hushed manner. But at the end of the day, when you look at India and China, when you look at the people and the cities, you just get to know that they are just so much more advanced that you will really require many years to catch up to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. But just enjoy your stardom there, Smita, as a lot of people are getting their selfies clicked with you. We'll come back to you in just a short moment.